Divorce seems to be imminent now, and it probably is for the best. I am the sole reason why we are getting a divorce, and I understand that now. I understand it is my perspective that I had in the past and how I displayed it, how I talked to my wife, how I treated her, how I did everything. That is the reason why we are getting a divorce, because I'm reading this book right now. It's an audiobook, actually. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, or something like that. And this guy, the author, talks a lot about responsibility, but I'll say that a little slower because he separates the two words, responsibility. And in a nutshell, he's basically talking about the ability we have to respond. How we respond matters, what we respond matters, and when we don't take care to take agency over the response ability we have, we may just respond in angry ways. We may respond in a way that's more lashing out. We may respond in a darker way. We may respond with bringing in other feelings that we have to that actual response, but we have responsibility and we can choose how we respond. And yesterday, it was the weirdest thing because I'm going around with my wife and we're looking at places to move because as you know, the house is being sold that we live in, and we won't have anything joint anymore. And we're going around looking, but I'm driving her to look at places that she's going to move to live on her own. So it's a very different feeling than when we were shopping for homes and places together, and we're sort of doing that pie in the sky life, envisioning together, walking and saying, hey, this could be this kid's room, and oh, you could have your office here, and oh, we could do this with the wall and blow out that wall, and this is what we're doing. It's a very different feeling when you're going around with a friend or a roommate or something like that, or someone you're not hitching yourself to permanently in the future and talking about the plans they have for their life. And the person that you're driving around with is your current wife that you know you're going to get a divorce from. It's the weirdest, most eerie feeling that I've felt with my wife, I guess. And today, like I said before, the jig is up on this podcast. My wife knows about the podcast. She's very upset that I'm recording the podcast. I went to Instagram and I blocked her because I didn't want her to find the podcast. I didn't want her to know about the podcast because after having thought about it, like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing such a dickish shitbag thing of recording my life? Why am I going through the lengthy, painstaking process of changing my voice and modulating that and then posting it as a podcast on YouTube? Why am I doing any of this stuff? I felt, and to a degree I still feel, unheard. And I'm very angry. And this podcast, while it's grown to a lot of different things for me, here's on the positive side. The podcast has helped me reflect on my feelings and thoughts after I've recorded them, after I've had an emotional ramp up of feelings that I maybe don't understand, most likely don't understand, and then I just knee-jerk reaction, reply, respond, and record, or I feel like I've had a few weeks to figure out how I feel, and now I'm going to record this podcast with these points or something like that. I just really speak off the top of my head as if I was just going to sit down at the end of the night, open up my diary or my journal, and start writing. This is what this is. This is the equivalent of me putting my face into a pillow and screaming to the top of my lungs. When you write a diary entry, you don't necessarily write it for any sort of resolution. You may just want to lament about your father and how he treated you, your mother and how she wasn't there, your spouse and how you feel that you're misunderstood. That's what I'm doing here. I'm happy that I have a little bit of a therapeutic dose that I get out of this, in that, I can just kind of, I have these, like I said, I have these different points in time that I can visit and revisit this and say, wow, this happened. I forgot about that. Or you forgot about that really good thing that happened, or you forgot your role in that. And I just forget so much that, I just really, I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget my wife, and I don't want to forget the good that we've had. I don't want to dwell on the bad that we've had either. And what I now understand is that while I thought I wasn't dwelling, I actually was, and I was holding grudges. And in a marriage, there's no place for a grudge. Because you're living with that person. You're still committing to spend your life together with that person. And how can you move in warm and loving and authentic fashion with someone you're holding a grudge against? Forgiveness is probably one of the simplest yet hardest things to do. And I know I haven't forgiven my wife for things. And I thought that I did. But now it really explains why I've treated her the way that I've treated her. And why I've internalized the things that I've internalized, because I never really forgave her. And this goes to what happened yesterday while we're sitting there in front of this model home that we're going to go in and look in for her to purchase, I guess. I'm just overcome with all of this emotion. And I brought up an example. The example was, now there are a lot of things that go into someone cheating, obviously. Lots of things go into someone cheating. And the person that got cheated on, in a lot of cases, has something to do with why the person cheated. I'm not trying to justify someone's cheating, but all I'm saying is, if someone felt like they weren't getting the attention that they need or deserved or desired, and they got that attention from somewhere else, that could have created an environment for them to stray. And I created an environment for my wife to stray. That is my accountability for that. My wife straying is her choice and her fuck up. Now, where does the blame come down? Whose fault is it that the person cheated? It's the person that cheated. And I cheated. So when I chose to cheat, that was my choice to cheat. That was the way that I decided to respond to that. That was my responsibility for all the things that I felt were going wrong in my marriage or whatever. I chose to cheat. So did my wife. Now, my wife's, I'm sorry. I brought up to my wife yesterday. I said, the thing is, like, I'm just really sad and hurt because when I didn't know you were cheating, I mean, she was at that time, but I didn't know that she was, and I got us enrolled in this couples counseling, and we're having these talks, and we're going for weeks, and my wife hadn't owned up to cheating, and it wasn't until I found her call logs and I saw all the things that she was doing, and I saw all the text messages that she had, thousands of them between her and a guy. And I'm like, well, I didn't know it was a guy, but it was one number. And I'm like, I don't recognize this number. And I did all my sleuthing and I found out. And then she finally copped to it. Only in counseling, when I pulled out phone records, that's when she copped to it. And I'm like, holy shit. I just, but the thing that hurt the most was the days that we were going to counseling. The counseling would get out at about 4:00, and to know that my wife was calling him at about 4:03, 4:05 when we would leave and call him. She was talking to him about what I talked about in counseling. So, the violation that I felt, okay, you're cheating on me. Fuck, that's really bad. Okay, now you're going to counseling and you're still lying while we're in counseling, knowing that I'm trying to get a solution to our problem. Fuck, that's bad. But now to know you're calling the guy you're cheating on me with, to tell him the private things about maybe money, my children, my family, my upbringing, my childhood. I don't know what I went into in counseling. I don't know how bare I was on some of those times, but you're talking to him directly after our counseling session about what we're talking about in counseling. And I told her, I brought that up yesterday, and I'm like, the fact that you just didn't say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry that I did that to you, and don't say anything else. That's why you're right. I know that we need a divorce because we're just two different types of people. My wife constantly has said, well, you shouldn't have made me feel this way. You have always been so disrespectful to me. You chose your mom or your sister and your father, whatever. You chose these other people over me. You did this, you did that. My wife always talked about what I did when I would bring up something like that. All I'm trying to tell her is that I'm just so hurt that you told this guy that is a stranger to even you that what I'm talking about in counseling, you hurt me. That was a big, big betrayal. Aside from you just giving a body, like telling this person where we live and telling him what I'm saying privately to you and who I've signed an agreement with for HIPAA laws to not share my privacy. You're sharing my deepest, darkest vulnerabilities with a stranger that just wants to fuck you. Just say, I'm sorry and I shouldn't have done that to you. And yesterday, she just looked at me and she's like, I don't have anything to say. And that's why I record these entries, because I usually in the past, I've forgotten what my wife does made me feel because some time may have gone by, or maybe she might have apologized for something else. And I would look at these things as maybe isolated. And then when she would do something very similar again, I would just look at these things in isolation. But thanks to these recordings, I can remember, I'm like, yeah, I remember I was crying my eyes out yesterday and telling her, it's just that you did that. It broke my heart to know that you would share that. And all I wanted you to do was say, I am so sorry. I should have never done that to you. I'm so sorry. I should have never shared that. I'm just sorry, and I wish I could take it back. If I could take it back, I would. That's all I wanted her to say. I don't want her to say, I'm sorry, but, I wouldn't have done it if you hadn't. So, because all that now feels like is my wife will only do right if she feels I am doing right. My wife will only respect me if she feels she's being respected. My wife will only listen when she feels she's being listened to. Her default isn't to respect, to love, to listen. It doesn't seem like that's her default. It seems like her default is to react and respond to how she's being treated. And that is why I say this marriage failing is solely my fault. In fact, here's what my wife sent me today. I'm so angry with you. This is after our talk yesterday. I'm so angry with you. Why did you have to be this way? We could have been happy together. All of us. I know that I played my part, but I felt like one of our kids early on, like I was always disappointing you. I'm not blaming you for all of our problems, but I do believe you are solely responsible for the end of our marriage. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want you to understand how I feel and why. You asked me if I was excited about my future without you. I really felt like you didn't/don't understand. What a painful and difficult decision this was and continues to be for me. And I totally understand and I agree with her. I am solely to blame. I didn't understand how I was. I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand how much I displaced. I didn't understand how much I grouped, how much I categorized, how much I made people feel like they were disappointing me. I didn't understand what pressure that put on my wife, and I didn't understand how that made her feel. And I can, yes, because it's a free country, I can take issue with how my wife responded, but I can only take issue so much. Let's say you were to kick a dog. Literally, physically, you just kicked a dog. Okay? There's one. Dogs. Let's say you kicked dogs. One dog growls at you and cowers away. Another dog growls at you and barks, shows his teeth a little more aggressively. Another dog does not cower. It just runs away into a corner and tries to avoid you. Another dog you kick takes one kick and turns and attacks you and bites you. You are going to likely think that the dog that growls, the dog that cowered, the dog that fled, those are quote unquote better dogs because they ran away and they didn't strike you. And you're going to feel that you need to do something like put down the dog that bit you because it attacked. And you are going to go into this weird fight versus flight thing where you're like, you got to put the dog down. You start rationalizing bullshit. This dog must be bad. It's vicious, blah, blah, blah. You start to justify all of the things and you start to maybe even connect the dots. Hey, I remember that other time that I tried to give the dog a treat and it kind of bit my hand. And I remember another time I tried to take the toy and it growled at me. And I remember this. The signs were always there. I think that's called confirmation bias. You're just looking for things to confirm your bias because you just got bit hard by a dog, but that was just how that dog decided to respond. The rest of the dogs could have responded the same way, like putting your hand on the stove. If you put your hand on the stove, you could do it. You could put your hand on 10 different stoves, and when they're turned on, none of them are going to feel cool and give you frostbite. Every stove that you put your hand on that's on will burn you, and that hot heat will hurt the exact same way regardless of the stove. That's when you have I don't know what that's called maybe, but a measured response, a statically measured response. It will, everything that you do will respond in the exact same way, a repeatable experiment. But treating my wife badly, the way I treated my wife badly, I can't necessarily take issue with how she responded and her evolution. Her evolution was maybe to take the kicks and cower. Then she took the kicks and she growled. Then she took the kicks and then she bit. And it's like, the fact that I got bit isn't 100% the dog, or in this case, my wife's fault. I created an environment where I got bit. And that's why sometimes I say I'm divorce torn. I put that one Instagram graphic up. If you go over to the Instagram page, Divorce Diaries Podcast, you'll see the some of the posts, and you'll see just divorce torn because I know that, especially in the case of me cheating, I know what I felt and why I cheated. And my wife has her reasons, and she knows how she felt and why she cheated. And now she's choosing divorce. We are not going to be together anymore. Do I think that's the right choice for her? No. Do I think it's the right choice for our family? No. In a perfect world, what would I want my wife to do? What she wants and wanted me to do. Get over it. Don't bring it up. Forgive. And but when people aren't able to, because they feel that they're at the end of their rope or whatever it is, then that is it. I mean, there was this, I forget who it was, some really old lady and man, they were a couple, maybe married 60 years, something like that. And someone asked, what's the secret to marriage? And, how did you avoid divorce? And the woman just responded with, you don't get divorced. And the person that was interviewing her kind of laughed and asked the question again, but in a more serious tone, as if the woman didn't really understand her the first time. What's your reason? How do you tell other people to stay married, and what advice do you give them? She just said, don't get divorced. She kind of elaborated a little bit just to say that there are going to be many, many, many reasons to divorce, but you cannot get one. You need to stay married. There will always be reasons to get divorced that are going to be valid. I don't like the way the person talks to me. They've always done that over these years. I don't like this, that they cheated, whatever. Everything happens. But if you choose to get a divorce, you chose to get one. That's the only way you don't get a divorce, is if you choose to not get a divorce. And right now, my wife is choosing, there's no right now. My wife is choosing to get a divorce, and I don't have the will to, I have the will to change myself, but I don't have the will to convince anyone of my change, my path, my growth anymore. I don't have any more apologies to give that I haven't already given. Like, I really don't. When I'm wrong, I'll apologize to you every time. But right now, with the growth that I have, I'm apologizing for mistakes I made as a different person. But I don't have a problem doing that, because I'm still the guy that did those shitty things. I'm still the guy that cheated. But, oh my God, I can't even count how many years ago it was at this point. It doesn't matter how many years ago the cheating was, but I'm at the point, and anyone is, after they've done something wrong to someone. How long can you live under the shadow of the mistake you made before? Someone commits murder and you go to jail. Let's just say, I don't know any jurisdictional rules or laws, but I know we've heard all this, and when we've watched crime shows, you're going to get 25 to life. Okay. Kill someone, murder one, 25 to life. Now, with 25 to life, what if you were 16 and it was 70 years? No matter what, 70 years. And we're going to come in and we're going to talk to you about it every week. And we're going to tell you that, you shouldn't have done that. And you've got to say sorry, right? That you did it. And you do. But after like the third year maybe of that, and you're like, hey, I was definitely wrong, but are you guys going to keep coming every week for the next 67 years so that we can have this conversation? And they look at you and they say, yeah, as long as it takes. Okay. If I continue to apologize, which I will, because I am wrong, but I mean, is my sentence going to be lifted? Are you going to stop, viewing me as horrible, or is this just something we're going to do forever? And they're like, no, I'm going to come every day to remind you of what you did, and you're going to apologize, because I'm not over it. I'm not over it. And sometimes we're going to bring the family, and you're going to have to look in their eyes, and you're going to have to apologize again to them, and you're going to have to, and you're going to have to. And you're like, but I get it. I've done that for the last 3 years. At some point, it doesn't mean that the person that committed the crime is no longer remorseful or sorry for what they did. But at some point, that person may say, you know what? I can't keep apologizing for this for the rest of my life. I can't continue to pay for my mistake while I'm paying for my mistake. And that's sort of where I am now, which is why I am accepting the choice that my wife is making to divorce. I won't fight her on it anymore. I have fought her on it in the past. I'm very sad about it. I don't want my family to break up, and I understand that it's my fault. But even getting this message today, I just want you to understand how I feel. And I'm so mad at you, and I'm so hurt. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Let me read you my response. And I'll read it Hers again. This is her. I'm so angry with you. Why did you have to be this way? We could have been happy together, all of us. I know that I played my part, but I felt like one of the kids early on, like I was always disappointing you. I'm not blaming you for all of our problems, but I do believe you are solely responsible for the end of our marriage. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I just want you to understand how I feel and why. You asked me if I was excited about my future without you. I've really felt like you didn't/don't understand. What a painful and difficult decision this was and continues to be for me. My response was, I know why I'm this way, but I wish I wasn't. We could have been happy. If it weren't for me, my behavior and perspectives. I understand that I'm solely to blame for the end of our marriage. I know you aren't trying to make me feel bad, and I do understand how you feel because of me. I ultimately said, I'm happy you are doing what is best for you. I love you. I'm sorry. I also understand how I made you feel like our kid did and maybe still does. I'll keep working on myself. Everyone will be better for it. I don't know how to do this getting better thing. I know it's much like law, being a doctor, or yoga. It's a practice that you will never master. Fixing yourself, getting better as an individual and as a person. And that's me. I am really, really, really fucking flawed, and I'm really, really, really fucking damaged. And I've got a really, really long way to go. And I'll never get there, but hopefully tomorrow I can just be a little bit better. And if I am a statistic, a divorced man with children that's living, in his one-bedroom apartment, then that's me, alone. But if I'm able to hold my family together, I will try. But if that is unable to happen, I have to accept that. And I have to accept that my behavior has led me exactly to where I am. And I am being extremely accountable and owning that my poor leadership as a husband has broken up my family. So this time when I say I want a divorce, the want doesn't mean desire. Because I don't want a divorce, but I don't believe that we can have a happy marriage. So I guess for that, I want a divorce. I hope it doesn't happen.